What's up, family? Welcome back to Southside Screens. I'm Malik Mac Turner. Today, we got something that hit me different. Ryan Coogler has said two of the characters in his new film, Sinners, Smoke and Stack, were influenced by Nipsey Hussle and his brother Blacc Sam. So today, we unpacking that link, how a hip-hop legacy shows up in black cinema, what it means for representation, and why seeing folks like Nipsey and Sam reflected on screen matters. Ayana's in the building to help break it down. Ayana, you here?
I'm here, Malik. Hey, everyone. So glad to be with you on this one. This story sits at the intersection of so many things I care about: mentorship, masculinity, community economics, and how artists translate lived experience into character work.
Exactly. All right, quick roadmap for folks. First, we'll sketch who Nipsey and Blacc Sam were for listeners who need a refresher. Then, we'll describe Smoke and Stack and Sinners. No heavy spoilers, promise. And then trace the through lines, the values Coogler pulled from the Hustle brothers. Finally, we'll zoom out. Why this kind of influence matters for legacy and black storytelling. Sound good?
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right, quick and real. Who were Nipsey Hussle and Blacc Sam? Ayana, kick it off.
Sure. Nipsey Hussle, born Ermias Askedom, was a Los Angeles rapper. Sure. But I want listeners to hear the part that's more than music. Nipsey built with a long game mentality. He launched Marathon Clothing, invested in the Blacc, promoted ownership over rent seeking, and he worked to create local opportunities, from tech incubators to community cleanups. His brother, Sam, known as Blacc Sam, was more behind the scenes, often described as the business stabilizer, the guy who helped operationalize Nipsey's vision. Together, they represented a model: hustle plus stewardship, ambition tied to place and people.
Yeah, and just to add, Nipsey's brand wasn't flashy flex for flex's sake. It was about legacy. The marathon wasn't just a slogan. It was a philosophy, long-term investment in yourself and your community. He talked about ownership like a sermon. He talked about loyalty, about building institutions where there had been none. And Sam, people who knew him say he was the calm anchor.
Right. Think about leadership that doesn't always scream. It's measured, strategic. That's important because in storytelling, especially film, we often get extremes, the villain or the savior. Nipsey and Sam embodied something more nuanced, principled pragmatism.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Inside Sinners. Now, Ayana, without spoiling plot beats, tell folks who Smoke and Stack are in Coogler's world.
Smoke and Stack are this duo inside Centers who operate in a neighborhood economy that's both tender and violent. They're not caricatures. Smoke is the visionary. People listen when he speaks. He's about longer timelines. He thinks in generational terms. Stack is the anchor, the practical brotherly force that keeps plans grounded, negotiates, diffuses tension. Together, their presence in the film reads like a counterweight to chaos. They model a code, an ethic, a way of moving through the streets that prioritizes community continuity over quick wins.
Yeah. When you watch them, you get a sense that these are men who moved with intent. They have rules, they have loyalty, and they see the neighborhood as something to protect, not exploit. Coogler gives them scenes where their influence isn't just about muscle or reputation. It's about how they steer younger people, how they invest in people, how they carry grief and responsibility.
And that choice, to make them morally ambiguous but basically principled, is where the Nipsey link starts to come into focus.
Let's get into that. Tracing the influence, specific echoes from Nipsey and Blacc Sam to Smoke and Stack. Ayana, you want to lay out the through lines?
Absolutely. First through line, the duo dynamic. Nipsey and Sam presented a sibling partnership where roles were complementary. Nipsey's public-facing visionary work paired with Sam's operational steadiness. Same rhythm you hear in Smoke and Stack. Second, emphasis on economic empowerment and ownership. In the film, Smoke speaks about building options, creating futures. That's very much Nipsey's public stance. Ownership as liberation. Third, code of ethics about how to move in the neighborhood. Both the Hustles and Coogler's characters prioritize community uplift, whether it's protecting a block, mentoring youth, or redirecting volatile energy into sustainable projects. Fourth, leadership style. Calm, strategic, forward-thinking, not theatrically violent. Nipsey's presence carried a moral authority. Coogler translates that to screen and how other characters respond to Smoke and Stack.
Yeah, you see it in the small stuff too. The way Stack diffuses a situation rather than escalating it, or how Smoke plans for the long game rather than chasing a quick score. Those are almost direct moral motifs from Nipsey's interviews and practice. Coogler said he didn't want to make a biopic. He wanted to honor an ethos. And to me, that distinction matters. It's respectful and it preserves creative space.
Exactly. It can be risky to lift someone too literally into fiction. You either flatten them or you mythologize them. Coogler seems intentional about extracting values rather than copying biography. That allows the film to nod to Nipsey's legacy while creating characters with agency inside the story's own logic.
Mmm. And there's an emotional texture too. Like the scenes where Smoke holds his tongue, but you can feel the weight of responsibility. That quiet leadership, you don't always get that in gangster tropes. It's restorative.
Yes, and also notice how Coogler centers relationships. Nipsey's work was relational. Partnership with his brother, with neighbors, with entrepreneurs. Coogler's Smoke and Stack carry that relational politics on screen. They don't just control territory, they build networks.
Can I interrupt real quick? Ayana, when you see movies that take inspiration like this, you feel a different kind of pride as a viewer, right? Like seeing values we've seen in our communities elevated, not exoticized.
Absolutely, Malik. There's a dignity in that representation. It says our strategies, our patience, our investment in place are cinematic and worthy of being modeled.
Okay, quick reaction from me. Wow.
I see you.
All right, moving to the bigger conversation. Legacy and representation in Black storytelling. Ayana, how does embedding Nipsey's ethos in Sinners extend his legacy beyond music and local activism?
When a filmmaker like Coogler integrates the ethos of a community leader into mainstream cinema, it's an act of cultural preservation. Film reaches audiences who might not have followed Nipsey's local work closely. It transmits values, ownership, mentorship, generational thinking into a narrative archive. That archive becomes reference material for how we imagine Black masculinity and leadership. Instead of being contained in music or news cycles, the ethos gets reenacted, taught, and felt in popular culture. And importantly, it normalizes complexity. Black men as builders, as strategists, as caretakers.
Yes, and there's this larger pattern now. Hip-hop culture seeping into and reshaping cinematic storytelling. We seeing more filmmakers who grew up with hip-hop using its ethics and aesthetics to craft narratives that center agency. Coogler's influence extends to how writers approach character economics. Not just who pulls the trigger, but who invests in the corner store. That shift matters.
And it matters because legacy isn't only stored in monuments or headlines, it's stored in stories we tell later. When a young person watches Smoke and Stack and recognizes the decisions those characters make, the advice they give, the way they steward resources, that viewer is absorbing a model. It's a form of cultural transmission that complements grassroots activism.
Right. And there's a humility in Coogler's move, too. He doesn't make sinners a Nipsey shrine. Instead, he creates figures who reflect principles. That preserves the humanity of Nipsey and Sam, while allowing audiences to interpret the influence through their own lens.
One more thought. This approach helps protect against a single story narrative. Often, when Black men are memorialized in culture, institutions reduce them to tragedy. By translating their ethos into characters who operate in complex social systems, Coogler resists that flattening. He shows people as actors, flawed, brilliant, consequential.
Man, that's powerful. Listeners, take that in. Okay, let's do some nitty-gritty questions people might have. Quick fire. Do Smoke and Stack glamorize street life? Ayana.
They complicate it. The film neither romanticizes nor outright condemns. It frames choices in context, limited opportunities, historic disinvestment, and the pressure to protect. By showing the ethical calculus, why someone would choose certain paths to create leverage, Coogler invites empathy and critique at once.
And second, if you're a Nipsey fan, will you feel honored or protective? I think both. It's natural. But I leave folks with this. Honoring a legacy can take many forms. Sometimes it's a mural. Sometimes it's a character who's not a copy, but a living echo. Both are valid.
That's fair. And the best art invites dialogue. If the film sparks people to revisit Nipsey's interviews, to explore Black Sam's role, to support local entrepreneurs, then it functioned as both art and catalyst.
All right. Listener takeaways. Ayana, give me the 3 things you want folks to walk away with after this episode.
1. Recognize the difference between biography and inspiration. Coogler is honoring an ethos, not making a biopic. 2. Observe the value of relational leadership. Smoke and Stack model partnership and generational thinking that we can emulate. 3. Consider how films can be repositories for community values. Watch Sinners and then go back to Nipsey's music, interviews, and projects. Let them inform each other.
And for me, 1. Notice the small things in the film. A look, a gesture, a paused conversation. Those are where legacy sneaks in. 2. Support the work around the people who inspired this. Local businesses, community programs, the organizations Nipsey and Sam pushed to build. 3. Talk about it. Share your reactions. Tag us. Tell us what moments in Sinners felt like echoes of the real world.
And if I may add, be gentle with grief. This conversation can stir up a lot, but there's also uplift here. That's the point, to keep building.
Yes, so final note. Sinners is doing something a lot of films don't. It threads a real-world moral economy into its characters without turning them into icons or caricatures. For those of us from places like Crenshaw, Englewood, Oakland, seeing that sensibility on a big screen feels like reclamation.
It does, and it opens doors for more stories that treat our communities as sites of brilliance and invention, not just conflict.
All right. Thank you, Ayana. This was rich.
Thanks, Malik. Always a joy to chew on culture with you.
So everyone listening, if this episode connected, share it with someone who remembers Nipsey's interviews or who looks to film for lessons. Drop your thoughts on social, tag us, and tell us which moments in Sinners felt like they were pulling from real-life values you recognize. Until then, keep building, keep learning, and keep the marathon mindset. Mac.